Hello, Alabama fans, and welcome to the BOL Recruiting Show. With me is Andrew Bone. He's a recruiting extraordinaire, does a great job from BamaOnline.com. And within, I'm, of course, Tim Watts, who runs second fiddle to Andrew. I get his horse ready when he takes off riding to save those damsels in distress. Welcome to the BOL Show. And for you guys that are BOL Roundtable members, it's good to see you guys. Hope to see you discussing this on the roundtable. And for you that aren't familiar with BamaOnline.com, give us a try because it's about to get super interesting, Andrew. Last year, this is when the fuse was lit for the fireworks.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, you look back to last year. I think it was May the 31st was that first kickoff weekend, and there was a lot of guys that were in town. But most notably were Keelan Russell and Chuck McDonald. These are two guys that committed shortly after the visit. And, getting Keelan on campus really for the first time since he received that offer, back in April. You kind of didn't know what to expect. You kind of had a feeling, maybe this was going to go, in a good direction, but he still had visits set up for Florida. I think he was going to go to Oregon. He'd just come off a visit to Ole Miss. So, was he going to go ahead and jump on board and flip from SMU that weekend? And, getting him, I guess it was a day or two after, he was on campus, getting him in the class to go ahead and help recruit. That was really huge for the next 2 months.
Yeah, Keelan was such a big one. I know by now we've talked about him enough, but for a while it just felt like we hadn't talked about him enough. Everything happened sort of late, the April eval, the offer, everything then tumbled so fast, unofficial, official commitment and all that, but obviously a huge movement. Now we saw a few guys commit right off this visit, and we've seen them commit on the visit and go public that week. And we've seen them wait a couple of weeks. But I tell you, they've had pretty good results. Even if you skip ahead to the second weekend, I think Michael Carroll was there and committed somewhere in midweek after that. So they've had good results. But I don't know. I want your opinion. Do you think it's necessarily a good or a bad thing? A bad thing, obviously, not a good thing. If they wait a little bit to commit.
Yeah, not necessarily. It's a lot different when you have. I think people start getting used to the players coming in from the transfer portal. And you're like, all right, if they don't commit, they're
Yeah.
probably going to go somewhere else. And most of the time, that's true. But when in high school recruiting, these guys, they've been waiting for these official visits to happen. They want to enjoy that process. They know it's very rare that you're going to go on an official visit and you're going to have a bad time. It's always going to be a great experience. They may know where they're going, but they still want to, go to these other schools, check them out, one last time, or maybe even a first time before they make that decision. So I don't think it's necessarily that big of a deal, but for Alabama going into the summer, you only have 5 commitments. I think they would like to get a couple, before, let's say, the end of June. So it's going to be interesting to kind of see how it shakes out especially these first 2 weeks. Can they get somebody this weekend, potentially next weekend, kind of jump on board? I think that there's potentially some momentum there, but also wouldn't be surprised if it's a little bit later on in the month.
We keep hearing about Alabama's off to a slow start. We hear it a lot. It's startling.
Every
Like,
year.
we discussed, it's like Groundhog's Year when it comes to recruiting. Nobody remembers a year ago. It's crazy because you can go to our database or our profile and, go to our old stories and stuff, and you can see how this played out. Alabama had 4 commitments at this time last year. 3 were 3 stars, by the way. This year they got 5 commitments. They're all 4 stars. One's a 5 star, and Jordan Edmondson. So they're right where they wanted to be. They want to have the talks, want to have the NIL talks, roll out the red carpet, see who can shut it down, see who'll take visits. And one other factor in this recruitment isn't just Alabama wants the commitments. If the kids want a spot, they're going to have to take that spot when they have the chance, because it's going to come, first serve, because they've set the board up really nicely, Andrew.
I feel a lot better this year heading into the summer than I did last year. Last year, I had no idea
Absolutely.
what was going to happen. No clue. The coaching staff had been there for 5 months, 6 months, and they were still kind of building new relationships with guys. They'd seen them, once or twice. Now, most of these relationships, a lot of these guys that are going to be coming in over this next month, they've been recruiting them for more than a year. They know everything about them. They know who they want. They know who potentially is a backup plan. They kind of know what the NIL situation is going to be with most of these guys already, and obviously that's going to change a little bit. But they kind of know the ballpark. Heading into these official visits. But I think heading into them, you look at, I think there's 42, 43 guys that are currently confirmed for officials, and that's going to change. That number is probably going to grow, and we'll probably see, even some guys that end up not coming in. But I think heading into the summer, they feel pretty good that they're in that top two, top three for a high majority of those players, coming in for visits this summer.
Yeah, last year we thought it was a pretty big visitor weekend the first weekend with 11 officials, 11 or 12 official visits. This year, 14 officials and an unofficial who's probably as big as any of the officials in many ways, with Tamala, the quarterback, committed to Iowa State, coming in. And kind of interesting, Alabama offered him kind of out, just quickly. And it quickly, we had nuggets and stuff on it. The dominoes there have been to topple. And dominoes probably, I got to find a better new phrase there, but the momentum swung to Alabama. Now it's not anywhere near a done deal. This is going to be the first visit. He's got Iowa State unofficial visit lined up, and then we'll see after these two visits exactly where he stands. Because if he comes back for an Alabama official visit, you really got to like their chances.
Yeah, I think so. I think when you come down to Tuscaloosa for an unofficial visit and you're committed somewhere else, that shows a level of interest already. He wants to come down, check things out. But Nick Sheridan, Alabama's Alabama's quarterbacks coach, former offensive coordinator. But he went out and saw him this spring. Went out and saw several quarterbacks. I mean, it wasn't just Jet. He went out. Another quarterback, Matt Ponatowski, was also offered by Alabama this spring. Saw several quarterbacks, extended two offers. Those two guys, of course, not bad. Number 9, number 10 quarterback recruits in the country. So getting him on campus this weekend is going to be really interesting. It's going to be the first meeting with Coach DeBoer, Ryan Grubb. Obviously, they've already talked, but this is going to be the first time they have a chance to really sit down, get to know him. I'm sure he's going to, coming down for an unofficial visit, I'm sure they want to see him throw the ball a little bit as well. So I think we'll certainly, hear more after the visit. Are they going to push for him to come back for an official? Is he open to that? But I think being open to coming down for an unofficial visit, if they do make a push there, I think he'll come back for an official.
Going back to the groundhog year, with this, literally when Bama offered and it looked like Bama was trending, there was way too many people going in. Iowa State commitment. That is a year almost to the day after an SMU commitment. You know what I mean? At some point, I think you just trust this staff. Really, the thing I love about the quarterback evals, hit, miss, or whatever, the future will tell us that they're so thorough, Andrew. They go out, they see, they check boxes mentally. Does he know an offense? Does he learn fast? Is he a leader? They are doing everything they can there. So you got to feel good when they're confident, because like we saw with Keelan, when they went all in, when they found their guy, it was full throttle, all gas.
Well, you look at this kid. I mean, this guy that, passed for over 3,200 yards during his junior season, 47 touchdowns. I think only 3 interceptions. He commits to Iowa State back in, I think it was mid-April. A week later, he goes out to Los Angeles to compete in the Elite 11 regional and gets invited to the Elite 11 finals this summer. So, I think that says a lot about him as a quarterback, as a player. But obviously, a guy who's probably going to see his stock continue to rise, regardless if he flips to Alabama. Even though everybody's going to say, "Oh, he got that Bama bump because he flipped to Alabama," but sort of like Keelan last year. Keelan went out during the spring. He was previously committed to SMU, but then goes out, flips to Alabama, got the invite to the Elite 11, and won the Elite 11. So we'll see what happens with Jet Tamala this weekend. See how things go with Alabama.
And we want to put on record, he's already a borderline top 200 composite player. He's a top 10-ish quarterback. I think we have him in the top, on3.com has him in the top 120 range nationally. So this isn't a guy that's just
before the Alabama.
Yeah, we're putting this on record to go back and play this before anything happened. There's no bam, he's pretty highly thought of. Now, if he goes out and holds his own in Elite 11, that's always a big deal. And the feedback, we don't really hear, you got to hear behind the scenes like you and I do. The feedback behind how they were in the rooms, the X's and O's. We see the throws, we see the ratings, but what everybody doing those top 10, 12 rankings aren't doing is talking to the Elite 11 staff behind the scenes and seeing, and that was the thing with Keelan that stood out. High IQ, quick learner, that was the things you wanted to hear. And you don't always hear that. Andrew, obviously, we talked about the quarterback a lot because it is the most talked about position this year. But there's some other big names. I mean, I know we're pretty excited about Jet Washington, and the guy. Look, he's Kobe Bryant's nephew. He's always going to be. That's probably considered a big honor. We've seen people that resisted that, but this guy is huge. This guy is a good recruit. He's moved into the 5-star composite. I couldn't believe how big he was in some of the photos. So obviously, a big time talent coming in from Vegas.
I think it's the first time we've seen two Jets on on a visit
It is
to
unbelievable.
Alabama before. So,
Yep.
good to get Jet Washington back in Tuscaloosa. This is going to be his third overall trip to Alabama. I mean, this is a guy that has a great relationship with the Alabama coaching staff, and they've done a good job, throughout this whole process with him, and has really put themselves in that top 2 category heading into the summer with Oregon. They've been kind of fighting tooth and nail for the last few months with each other. Now he's going to take some other visits as well. Ohio State, I think USC stuck in there, or excuse me, Texas. But I think that Alabama's, I wouldn't say they have ground to make up, but they're going to have to really make a strong impression with Jet this weekend, because this is the first visit. He's got 3 other visits still coming up.
Set the bar.
So
Yeah, set the bar.
Set that bar really high with him this weekend. But he had a great meeting with Mo Lindquist and Courtney Morgan earlier this spring, and then he came back to Tuscaloosa in the spring as well for the 8A game. So we'll see how things shake out with Jet this weekend, but he's definitely the highest ranked recruit that's going to be on campus, 5-star, top 25 overall player in the country. So it'll be interesting to see how things go with him.
Yeah, and before we forget, if you guys get a chance and like this content, hit that like and subscribe button. We've been a little slower with recruiting since there wasn't a lot happening. I know we've covered the commitments, but it'll pick up obviously this summer. I've always enjoyed doing these with Andrew and some of the guys in the past, Joseph Hastings, Blake Byler, a new guy will be on with us. But hit that like and subscribe button, and we'll definitely be doing those more of these. And also, if you haven't tried the round table, I mean, not to brag, that thing is jumping nonstop. I mean, we have topics pop up on that thing that's, I mean, obviously sports, but even in the slow time, the discussion, Andrew can attest, is really interesting, and good people and hanging out. But Andrew, we've got all these visitors coming on. The one thing I noticed when I looked at all the guys coming in, you've got quite a smorgasbord of defensive linemen. And I'm thinking there's a part of the population of Alabama fan bases who are ecstatic with the defensive line recruiting, because this is the year where they're probably going to lose some guys next year. They're going really heavy on the defensive line this year, concentrated effort after kind of, playing ahead a little bit. But let's talk about some of these guys coming in on the defensive line. Nolan Wilson, Titan Davis, that's 2 guys that you're kind of watching closely. One's not that far from home in Mississippi, and Titan, man, we've been close to predicting Titan to Alabama several times.
Yeah, Alabama's already been off to a good start on the defensive front with two commitments, Camarion Johnson, Jamarian Matthews. But going into the summer, what's going to happen next? Are they going to be able to get one of these guys that are coming in this weekend? I mean, they have some really good defensive linemen, not just Nolan Wilson and Titan Davis that are going to be coming in. But I think those are 2 guys that you're watching, really closely. Nolan, his first offer was from Alabama last fall. I mean, this is a guy that Alabama's recruited for a long time. Has Alabama high on that list. I think Alabama, Ole Miss, Auburn. He named the top 5 the other day. I think those are probably the 3 schools that are right there. Miami's another school that has been surging with him, but and then Titan Davis. I mean, this is another big defensive lineman, 6 foot, almost 6'5". 270 pounds, has visited Alabama twice. He came down to Tuscaloosa twice during the spring. I think that second trip, we were like, okay, we were close to probably making a prediction there, but, he does have some more visits coming up. will he potentially, shut that down after this weekend? I think that's probably the one guy that we're paying very close attention to, as far as guys who could commit this weekend. Not saying it's going to happen, but I think that Titan is a guy that they really like, have recruited heavily, and have built a very strong relationship with.
Yeah, and he's a guy you've been looking at him. He's got the big offers: Alabama, Michigan, USC, Penn State. He's got pretty much offers from everybody. But when he came in on that unofficial visit, I think Alabama kind of took it. Michigan's going to battle too. Obviously, USC's throwing their hat in the ring. But when he came for Alabama, the feedback from his camp and the Alabama side was really good, really positive. But they know they've got to close here. I mean, it's a big weekend from that standpoint. And like you said, they've got two defensive linemen, and the tendency is not to really talk about the guys you've got. It's almost like the Christmas presents you're going to open versus the Christmas presents you've already got. But I mean, getting off to the start that they have with Jamarian Matthews and Kamarian Johnson, he doesn't get nearly enough respect, if we're being honest. It's a good football player. I think the rankings will catch up to him. His film is good as anybody in the country at his position. Not lobbying for a 5-star, but he's that good. Coming in, you got a couple other guys. Kevin Ford, let's talk about him. Very interesting prospect. Another guy with all the offers. Not sure where he projects inside or whatever. Built like a tank. Looks like he could carry as much weight as he wanted to.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me a little bit of Jordan Renaud coming out of high school.
Yeah.
Another Texas native. I mean, he kind of is in between that Wolf, bandit position. I think Alabama's currently looking at him, as a Wolf, but they've recruited him heavily for a long time, and this is going to be his third trip to Tuscaloosa this year. Was in Tuscaloosa earlier this spring. Was also at Junior Day back in February. So we know that Alabama's got a former Duncanville High School star on its roster that's probably going to be recruiting him this weekend, and Keelan Russell. So Alabama's been right there in the mix with KJ Ford for a while. So I think that big weekend for him. Still has a lot of other visits coming up. So we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, switching to the other side of the spectrum, the other side of the trenches is Malachi Lee's coming in, and right now I think Alabama's been kind of quiet on the offensive line, which is surprising because it was basically we've seen an opposite. Last year, D line was pretty quiet, offensive line was very loud. This time we're kind of seeing the opposite, but I think they're still figuring out who fits in with what they have, who fits in what they want to do. But this is a chance Alabama. He's got some big official visits coming up for Malachi Lee to make their move, figure out what they want to do with him.
Yeah, I went back the other day, and pretty much all the way to 2008, and looked at all the different offensive line classes year after year after year, and it's like, all right, they signed 5, two really good ones, and then the next year was 3. It would be 3, and all guys that were, none of them were ranked in the top 100, and it was like that year after year after year. So it wasn't just this year. Alabama signed a great offensive line class last year with 2 5-stars plus DeBose and Waldrop. So what were they going to be able to do in this year's recruiting cycle? And they got Chris Booker early on. But they haven't really been heavily involved in a lot of other top end recruitments. The Jackson Cantwells, Eman Joe out of DC. I mean, those are 2 5-star guys that we're certainly expecting very high NIL deals. So Alabama kind of had to back out of those recruitments early. So now they're going to have Malachi Lee, who is the highest ranked offensive lineman that Alabama's involved with right now, this late in the process. I mean, he's at 6'7", 310 pounds, out of Honolulu. Took a visit to Alabama back in the spring. Had glowing reviews, about that trip. You almost kind of felt like this kid's about to commit to Alabama after after that visit. But you go back and you read a lot of other things and other stories, and he was high on other schools, high on Michigan, high on Georgia. Yeah. We'll see how things go. He's the number 1 recruit in Hawaii. Did you know he first received an offer from Alabama after his freshman year in high school from Nick Saban? Came to camp, came all the way from Hawaii to camp, got the offer from Coach Saban, but then didn't get re-offered until this past January by the new staff. So that relationship's has continued to grow. Coach Cap's done a great job there, but I would say going into the weekend, they've got some ground to make up because he's taken an official visit already to Georgia. Michigan has been on him the longest. He's been recruited by the Wolverines the longest, so I think they're very high on the list. So big visit for Alabama with Malachi Lee this weekend. They want to have a chance to potentially
So
earn commitment.
So the in-state, we've got a running back, Xavier Kroll, big name, reclassified, jumped ahead. A guy everyone's known about. Feel pretty good. He's been a regular at Alabama. I think he's committing a few days after his Alabama official. Is that right?
Yeah, June the
Was it?
26th.
So it's soon after that. So Alabama, you got to like Alabama's stance going into the official visits. But you reported KJ Edwards, big time running back out of Texas, big name, big product. Watch his film. Another guy. Now, obviously, Alabama would love to add both of them, which could be hard to do. But I found it interesting. Edwards was coming in, and it seems like there's some optimism about him.
I mean, this is a guy that is one of the best running backs in the country, number 3, overall. I mean, he rushed for over 2,200 yards during his junior season. Has won a couple state championships. Alabama offered him back in February, but he just hadn't had an opportunity to visit, and it was kind of surprising, learning that he was taking an official to Alabama because he'd really kind of narrowed his choices down to about 4 or 5 schools, but Alabama made the cut. He's going to come in for the visit, and you just kind of see how it how it goes. You don't really know much more than that as far as does Alabama have a realistic chance to land him? I think that going in probably not, but coming out, maybe they will. So we'll see how things go. I mean, that's the beauty of these official visits. You never know how things are going to shake out. I remember several years ago, probably not several years ago, but Tyler Booker coming in, going into his summer official visit. I mean, he was telling everybody it's going to come down to Georgia and Florida. Those are my top 2 schools. I'm going to one of those 2 schools, and then makes that visit to Alabama, completely changes everything. And we've seen that with so many kids. We've seen that, even going the opposite way, guys that were, heavy Alabama. Peter Woods, for instance, from your neck of the woods, going to Alabama. No worries there. Going to Alabama. I mean, he would always tell me that. I'm just going to take some visits.
Yeah, it was given.
Takes a visit to Clemson. It's over. And so, these official visits have a way of really changing a lot of recruitments, and we're going to see that this summer.
We were talking about that on the round table. Do you ever remember anybody having a bad official visit? Obviously, Ruben's the poster child with Ruben's at Auburn on Friday. I'll never forget. Ruben's at Auburn on Friday. It's Saturday. Eric Anders, former Alabama linebacker, is fighting. I'm up at the Shriners Club in Mountain Brook to watch him. He was an amateur. Turned out to be a pretty good fighter, actually, but it was just interesting. You know how you are that last weekend. You need a break, right? And Saturday is usually quiet. That's usually when you and I can watch a movie, get ready for Sunday before signing day.
Not together.
Well, that was insane. I get a picture, and Alvin – Ruben is at Alabama in the cafeteria eating, and I'm like, what in the hell? And Alvin Kamaro's behind him, which was a double what in the hell because Bama had 3 running backs committed. So, they do have a few bad visits, but good visits are very, very easy. Roll out the red carpet, everybody, high-fiving you and calling you an All-American and all of that. But the one thing we talk about it enough. I need to stop saying we don't talk about it enough. We do. This staff does a fantastic job of knocking on a door and building a relationship. So Nick Saban was the best ever at it. Alabama's trailing in March. Nick Saban had him committed in April. He was the best closer ever. I mean, but this staff has a great job. Starts with Courtney Morgan, and I'm going to miss somebody, but Cap, Freddie Roach, Shep, Shepard, I said him, Mo, everybody on this staff, Christian Robinson, they do a great job of building relationships. So this goes back to, Edwards visiting. He probably didn't have about Alabama in his list until they kind of made a move, got to know him, and made,
That's a credit to Robert Gillespie. I mean,
there's no doubt. I knew I'd miss somebody. G does a great job.
You look at the way that, of course, the way that he's recruited Xavier Kroll throughout this whole process. And now they're going to get Ryan Estrada, El Paso running back on campus.
For real.
Talking to him the other day, he said, hey, and we've talked about some of these other guys that Coach G's recruited for such a long time, like Kroll, Derek Cooper, now KJ Edwards. But Estrada told me, I don't want to get too far off topic, but he told me, he said, "Yeah, I talked to Coach Gillespie pretty much every single day." So that's the type of effort that these coaches are putting in. As far as recruiting their top end guys, they're not just calling them once a week or shooting them a text. They're building those relationships with them. A lot of times it's not too over the top, but in some cases they want to just make sure that that they are talking to these guys as much as as they can before these visits.
And there's been a lot of cynics that say relationships don't matter. We totally disagree with y'all. We think now there's going to be a situation where it's straight NIL, like Cantwell. We believe that was a straight, and I'm not judging him. It's a business decision. This is a business. There's no judgment on that. But more times than not, the relationship matters. And where the relationship still matters is if school X has offered 500,000 and Alabama's offered 425, the relationship could be the difference in making that happen. And we've seen that. Not Nick Saban obviously got a discount, but we saw last year guys like Dijon Lee and others coming for less money than they had offers. Keelan Russell, give me a break. In the last 2 weeks before signing day, could have named his price. So we think that really.
To add into that, Mike Carroll last year.
Good one.
Mike Carroll was an early commitment. I'd say early. He was a summer commitment for Alabama, but when he moved to IMG from Pennsylvania and started getting more recognition as one of the premier, top 15 overall players in the country, and other schools, Miami kind of snuck him down to its campus. Of course, his parents were not happy about that when they learned that he was down there. But then he takes an official visit to Colorado during the middle of the season, and they were throwing all sorts of stuff at him. But talking to his dad last year, he said, it's great to hear all these big numbers, and it really catches your eye and makes you start to think. But then you start also thinking about everything else that you have in Tuscaloosa that's off the field with David Ballou, the strength and conditioning coach, Jeff Allen. He said the nutrition staff, they have a nutrition plan for each individual player at Alabama. They don't just have broken it down by position groups or the whole team. You got to eat this, you got to eat that. It's so much more personal in Tuscaloosa, and I'm sure other schools do that as well. But some of these things make a big difference in recruitments, not just who's going to have a higher NIL figure out there for you.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I see that sometimes it's an NIL, straight NIL. Joshua Sharma was that way last year. Joshua Sharma was committed to Washington when Kalen DeBoer and Courtney Morgan were there, had an unbelievable relationship. They turned down more money to lean to Alabama, to want to commit to Alabama. But then the money kept coming. And at some point, the belt breaks, and you just say, best of luck to you. And one thing I like about this staff, they're not bitter about it. They understand it's a business, and it's going to go two ways. We're not going to cover every single prospect. We're going to wrap this up here in a few minutes. But again, BamaOnline.com, you can find it. Andrew has a great thread going. Blake Byler's jumping in. I jump in. We have talking recruiting. Everything's building up. It's Wednesday. This is not a finalized list. This list could grow to 20. It could shrink to 12. There's a lot of jockeying going on this week because it is the first official visitor weekend for a lot of schools. We say you want to be first or you want to be last, right? You don't want to be stuck in the middle, although I don't think there's any scientific proof of that. Andrew, a couple more guys before we get out of here. Let's talk about Sincere Johnson. This is an interesting one. Kind of parallels Justin Hill in the fact I'm a linebacker, state of Ohio, think he's an Ohio State lock. Alabama wins at the end. Now, this is a little different because of the school and, doesn't have those Alabama connections with his parents, but a guy that's very much interested in Alabama.
Yeah, I mean, definitely a tough school to recruit. They've been a pipeline to Ohio State for years. But Sincere got offered by Alabama. I think he was, pretty much the first linebacker, or at least the first day that Chuck Morrell, the first year linebackers coach for Alabama, extended some offers to linebackers. He was one of the very first ones. I mean, this is a big kid, 6'3", 235 pounds. I mean, he is you don't really see a lot of inside linebackers at that size anymore. They're all, 210, 215 pounds, but, he can absolutely move. And I think that Alabama at least is in that top two, I think, for him. Now, he's got a top three: Alabama, Ohio State, Penn State. He's already taken an official visit to Penn State, but it kind of seems like it may come down to the Crimson Tide and Ohio State. Now, grew up an Ohio State fan, been to Columbus a lot of times, but has family in Alabama, has a great relationship with Chuck Morrell, Kane Womack, and the defensive coaches. So, been to Tuscaloosa twice now. This will be his third time. Can they potentially pull off I think this would be an even bigger win than say Justin Hill a year ago, because of the connection to the school and how he grew up such a diehard fan. So we shall see how this weekend goes. But I do think probably heading into the weekend, I'd give Ohio State the edge. But I just it's hard to count out this Alabama staff, because they've done such a great job pulling guys from different regions of the country so far.
One of the interesting things about linebacker is how the linebacker position set up with Alabama. Very heavy seniors, right? And then very heavy underclassmen. I think Caden Jones is the only one that falls between a freshman and a senior. I might be missing somebody, but there's not a lot in the middle. So, when all these guys leave, when they graduate, when Lawson's group leaves, you're going to be 1 year behind the group. You're not going to be 4 years behind, 3 years behind. You're coming in and battle guys that you know of, a group they're very high on with Luke Metz, Abdul Sanders, and Duke Johnson. But what you're coming into battle for that. One more, Andrew. Booby Fish. I just want to say Booby because the fans like it. Booby Fish. Booby. I'm just going to keep saying Booby has been interesting here. He's reclassified. He's a wide receiver. He's a guy that probably is going to adjust to that college game a little quicker because of his position. One point we thought he's an LSU lock, kind of bounced around. He's taking his official this week. Give me some thoughts on him.
Yeah, I think Alabama certainly has made a significant move. I don't want to say they're in that the number one school at all, but I think they've made a significant move since that offer back in January, and they were able to get him on campus in the spring. We weren't sure if he was going to come back for an official visit or not. A lot of schools really trying to land one of those visits, but when he announced the top four, it kind of took me by surprise that Alabama made that cut. But then, talking to his dad, after the spring visit, talking to him after the in-home visit with Jamarcus Shepard last month, I mean, it certainly seems like Alabama's, done a great job there. Now, still might be tough to pull him out of Texas. Texas A&M's, right there, near the top. As you mentioned, LSU was a lean for such a long time, but I think Alabama, I think they're in it. I mean, I think that this is a weekend that they could really make another significant move with Booby. But they've done a good job in a short amount of time, because I don't think they knew that he was going to reclassify. Now, there may have been some other schools that knew about it because he had been to their campus and met with the coaches. He had never visited Alabama before, so when they kind of got wind back in January that he was going to reclassify, they immediately offered. They immediately started building that relationship. Courtney Morgan been very active in that role as well as far as recruiting. So big visit for Booby this weekend. I think he's one of two wide receivers that are going to be on campus.
And Ryan Mosley.
Yeah, and this is going to be a small wide receiver class. We know it was a small receiver class last year. Still going to be a small receiver class this year. And you kind of look at the guys that are coming in this month. I think they've only have 4 or 5 confirmed wide receiver official visitors throughout the entire month, at least so far. So you kind of know that it's going to be a small class.
Yeah, and they're looking for guys to come in and impact. And that's the thing with Shep. We talk about Jamarcus Shepard. He is a technician of not only building relationships, but I mean, the kids describe exactly where he lays out the plan for them. That's important to people to know how the plan fits. Hey, come here, we'll throw you the ball, but how are you going to develop? How are you going to get better? I mean, another who does a great job. Andrew Bone, we'll get out of here. We will see you guys next week, maybe Friday if there's any news. We're going to update it if there's news on the visitors list. Andrew, we got a few commitments visiting other schools. We'll update that right now, but also if things change, Friday. If there's enough news, we'll come back with an update. If not, Monday or Tuesday, look for us on the YouTube show. And if not, you can find us on the BamaOnline.com roundtable. Andrew, tell us a couple of the guys who are going to visit elsewhere before we get out of here.
Yeah, so Chris Booker, 4-star offensive lineman, committed committed to Alabama back in February. He is going to take an official visit to Georgia this weekend. It's funny back when he committed to Alabama. Oh, why are we taking I think Georgia fans were making fun of Alabama for taking a kid out of Georgia that nobody had heard of. But
yes, hilarious.
But now Georgia offers him and is bringing him in for an official visit. So he's going to take a visit to Georgia. Jamarian Matthews I think he is scheduled for an official visit to Auburn this weekend. Those kind of expected. It wasn't really unexpected at all that those guys were taking visits. They'd been talking about it for the last few months, so we knew that. I think those are the only two of the 5 Alabama commitments who are taking visits this weekend. But we're going to have everything at BamaOnline.com. That's where we have all of our content every single day. You read it. You can talk to us on the BOL Roundtable on our premium message board. So come check us out. We're on there as soon as this show ends. So come check out all the stuff and know exactly what's going on this weekend, next weekend, and throughout the entire year.
If we are anything in the world, we're accessible.
That's
Andrew
right.
and I, we tell each other to get the hell off the message boards when we're doing a weekend or traveling or vacation, and the other one does not listen very well. We'll text each other saying, well, I thought you're at a wedding. I thought you were in Europe. And we're like, I am. Thumbs. Well, thank you, Roll Tide Bama fans. And if y'all need anything, find us on the round table. And we'll see you soon. Best of luck to you.